Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
Empire of the Suns.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellan Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. What's up, Kev?
You're not even going to intro?
You say your name first, so then if people are listening for the first time, they're like, that's Kevin Zimmerman's voice. And then when Damon Allred, who is joining us, speaks, hello, Damon.
Hello, I am Damon Allred.
That's Damon Allred. You're Kevin Zimmerman. Now you talk, Kev. You've podcasted before. We've been doing this for 8 years. Figure it out. I know we don't have guests normally, but come on.
Professional guy over here.
You all right?
Yeah, I'm not all right. You're fine.
You want us to restart it?
No.
All right, man.
You're fine.
We're joined by Damon Allred. Damon is a part-time web content editor for us over here at ArizonaSports.com and KTR.com, which is very convenient because Kevin, you're not Kevin, you're Damon. See, I'm not used to saying other people's names. It's a thing for me, Kev, too. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Damon has been an NBA draft nerd, as self-described, and I would classify you as that. You've been around covering the draft for a couple of years now. I think, like, how long do you think you've been really going in depth with it, would you say, like really looking at it?
Going in depth probably since about 2019, 2020-ish.
Cool, nice. Yeah, I think my roots go back to like 2014 officially. My first thing written for Brightside was like why Zach LaVine is a lottery prospect. Oh, nice. That was going to, that might have been 13 then instead of 14. I don't really know exactly. But yeah, Damon's been around a minute. So, and more importantly, Damon has been looking at this draft for, like, you're talking to me about 25 guys in the office sometimes, 26 guys in the office. You've been paying attention to this class for a while now. Kevin and I, Kevin has a family. I need more mental sanity in my life. We don't really have the time for this anymore as we did back in 2018 to be sparring about why taking Dragan Bender or Marquise Chris was the right or wrong call, whatever you want to have it. So Damon's here to review this draft. And where I want to start with you specifically is a lot of people listening right now, they have a very, rightfully so, casual view of this draft. And I think the number one thing that they're hearing, along with what I'm hearing, is this draft sucks. Everyone craps on it. What do you think about that take? Where does that take come from, just with your year-round knowledge of this draft as a whole?
So the draft community had kind of been dreading this draft for a while now because everyone kind of realized that it's not a draft with much talent at the top, especially from the college ranks. I think the only two people I've considered, or seriously considered, for the number one spot in this draft are both French. Mm-hmm. And so it's just not a class that a lot of people know the biggest people in. Like, you talk about a Zach Edey, who's like the back-to-back national champion, or back-to-back national player of the year. And he's like maybe a borderline lottery pick. Klingon and Castle are two guys from the national champion UConn Huskies. They're closer to the top, but they're pretty much the cream of the crop as far as the college class goes.
Kevin, it's more that if you had the sixth pick, you would love all these guys, but one of them has to go number one, right?
Yeah. I mean, personally, for our purposes and what you just talked about, I haven't even watched very much of the top guys. I think just exposure-wise, even you look at like when Luka was coming out, obviously we got eyes on him on national team stuff, Euro stuff. When Slovenia made that run with him when he was really young, like we don't even have that with these guys. And obviously that's because also they're not like the best player on their national team, which we shouldn't expect that out of, 19-year-olds, 18-year-olds. So yeah, I mean, I'm there. I think though, with any draft, these are the type of drafts where it's like your best four players, could end up being middle of the first round into the second round, that type. So I think that's why it's, for our purposes, again, for the Suns at 22, it's going to be a fun draft to talk about just because like there's value there. And even when you get into the 30s, 40s, there's a lot of value. And honestly, like draft night should be a lot of fun because of that unpredictability that we're going to see starting at the very top, I think, right?
Yeah. I think Sarr, there's started to be a good consensus about he's probably going to go number one, but there's this uncertainty about Atlanta already has a couple bigs in their rotation that they like. Do they want to draft another 7-footer? So there's all sorts of uncertainty around that pick specifically and how it'll shape the rest of the night.
I would define this as a toolsy top of the draft where Alex Sarr, in theory, for what he is as an NBA prospect, is a number 1 overall pick, but you just watch him play and then you look at specifically his production. Reese Shea is the guy who averaged under 10 a game, right? Is it one of these two guys has like the Dragan Bender thing where you're like, oh man, like not a ton of production that we're going off of here. The quality of play and like the opposition is there, of course, but that's where you worry with this class. One of the things that I wanted to focus on with you is 2020 draft is one you and I knew really well, like that class specifically. That's the Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball one. That's Hallie instead of Jalen Smith. It's that one where you and I liked the top 7 or 8, and then after that we were like, I don't know who the 11th best guy in this class is, but you can go all the way to 30 or even 40, and it was a really weird kind of range there. For you, Damon, is there anything about this draft specifically with how it is outlined where you look at that sort of comparison? Does that make sense? Do you like a certain part of the draft? Is it deeper in the late first, mid first? Because the Suns are at 22. They could trade down. They could get another first. We don't know exactly what they're going to do here, but how do you characterize what this draft is beyond the top of it sucks?
Yeah, so funny enough, the draft kind of has about a cutoff right before where the Suns are going to pick, and so that can kind of play into the Suns' hands or against the Suns' hands in terms of like if a team is picking at 19 and they're like, wow, all the guys that I thought were lottery bound are off the board now, and we kind of have to dig deeper on our board. Maybe we're going to pick a guy who's been in college for 4 years, who's a proven shooter, and suddenly that's a candidate who's no longer on the Suns board. Just because like the ready-made stuff is going to appeal to people right around where the Suns are picking, I think.
So do you mean that the certified first-round prospects, there's only 20 or so? Is that kind of what you're getting at there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I want to get right into kind of the mock and what we're seeing in mock. So I've been tracking it. We have a great on ArizonaSports.com mock draft tracker. I kind of started it like beginning of June, basically. So this is pretty recent. It doesn't cover, even late May stuff for the most part. The interesting part about this is as much as you say, okay, there could be reaches and stuff, that means like if you're picking a 4-year college guy at 20, at 19, there are going to be guys and talent that fall to the Suns at 22 where they're going to have tough decisions. Okay, this guy played 1 year in college. Do we take that risk where we need to win now? Obviously, we want a rotation player. And so they're going to have that decision, I think, if they keep the pick, of course, and don't trade it. I'm going to run down this real quick. Most likely or most mock to Suns right now, as far as very public mock drafts of people I somewhat respect to greatly respect on the internet, Tyler Kolek out of Marquette has 6.
1 + 1 = 2. I know that they need they appoint a point guard, and here's the best point guard available.
Right. Kyle Filipowski, Duke's center, 5. To me, real quick, kind of fills in where Nurk fits, kind of the same things. Not a great athlete, but he does a lot of things, can move the ball, can shoot. Pittsburgh point guard Carrington 3 times. Then you get into Zach Edey twice. That would be interesting. Isaiah Collier, this is where we get into the, former maybe should have been in the lottery. Isaiah Collier spent 1 year at USC twice. And then you get into like Jacoby Walter, 1 year at Baylor, Dayron Holmes, a lot of years at Dayton. Keyshawn George, is it Keyshawn or Keyshawn? Keyshawn George from Miami, who spent 1 year there. Very interesting, like high ceiling guy. And then you go down the list of, Baylor, Shireman, Creighton, Johnny Furphy, Florida, Tyler Smith, G League Ignite.
Furphy, right?
Furphy. Yeah.
Furphy.
Like Murphy with an F.
Okay.
So
I've heard
that being said, like they're going to have the choice, right? Do you guys want to go one by one on those, or what pops to you, Damon? I guess what.
Well, let's zoom out with him for a second.
Yeah.
So my initial read, based on what I know about the like elevator pitch on all these prospects and what they are and that kind of thing. I've watched tape on a couple of guys. It's going to be a couple more in the next 2 weeks when I continue the series on the website. My take on Monday, based on, again, elevator pitches of these guys, is that De Silva specifically is one of a few guys, Tristan De Silva out of Colorado, where he is a mid to late first rounder and he is NBA ready right now. He joins a guy like Zach Edey, a guy like I guess Filipowski, if you want to throw him in there. You could throw in Shireman in there, maybe. You can, and that's where we start to get to the end of the first round. That's Tyler Kolek. Jalen Tyson out of Cal has been in for the Suns with a workout, and he's more of an NBA-ready guy. Do you think that it is more leaning towards the back half of the first round, the raw guys, or do you think that there's enough seasoned guys around there to play into the Suns' hand? Because ideally, they do not want to take someone who they have to develop for a year or two.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys who are seasoned and ready-made on the back end of the first round. And you're going to get like the Bub Carringtons here and there, where it's guys who have proven enough where maybe an upside flyer is worth it for a guy like that. But for the most part, yeah, it's the Koleks, it's the Filipowskis, guys like that are in that range. Jalen Bridges is a guy that you guys have brought up as someone who might find himself in that range if teams are feeling especially desiring of a 6'8" wing who can hit threes. So it's really just about what each team is looking for in those spots, I think.
Do you favor any of the raw guys specifically? Now that we're going to go into looking at individuals per se, is there someone where, with what the Suns need, what their track record is, however you want to give favor to a certain developmental prospect, is there anyone?
Yeah, Carrington is kind of standing out to me lately. I know that the guard redundancy is something people like to bring up, but Carrington can kind of play both the 1 and the 2, and could develop further down the road to where he's a star in the making, potentially. He's the youngest American in the class, and he's got some I don't care what the defense is doing, I will get to my spot and I will shoot it over it, and he has a lot of success. I tend to value that sort of approach from guards, so he's a guy that's really stood out to me. As for some of the other names that you brought up, I think Deron Holmes might be my number one choice for the Suns. If I can have any one of my choosing realistically, I think that's where I'm going.
Kevin, let's focus on those two guys. So Bub Carrington, 6'4" guard out of Baltimore, Maryland. He was on a pretty decent Pittsburgh team that went 22-11. Was, it looks like, their second option, but mainly their main guy on the perimeter. He averaged 14, 5, and 4. Half a steal a game, so nothing statistically jumping out with the defensive metrics exactly. 6 threes a game, and he took 11.5 shots a game, so he was jacking them up. 32% from 3 is a lower number than you would love, but at the same time, a lot of those are coming off of the dribble, I would imagine, for him. And I think that him and Isaiah Collier out of USC are the two guys where, from a talent perspective, if they're there at 22, it wouldn't be foolish for the Suns to believe, with the experience that they have around their team and the situation that they're going to be in, that they could turn one of those guys around and turn them into a legitimate weapon by the end of their rookie year, perhaps less optimistically into their second year. But is that something that the Suns need and should use this asset on? Because that's where you and I have had a lot of conversations over the last couple of months about how important this pick is, and I think where I've landed, I don't know if you agree or not, is that they need to keep the pick and they need to select someone with it and use that asset. But should they use it on someone who might not be able to ready to play right away? And then I think, to Damon's point, like the overall upside for a player, Collier and Carrington are two of the highest that could potentially be there.
Yeah.
But is that what should matter to the Suns in this spot?
Ooh. I think it matters. I mean, you're weighing on a scale, right? It's a sliding scale of ceiling versus floor. I think if we want to just focus this conversation on Carrington, Collier, they're kind of in the same bucket. If you want to compare them more and contrast, like, Carrington's shooting splits frighten me. If you're not efficient, you're not producing in college, it's a little bit scary. Neither of them were great shooters, but, Collier at least had a good shooting percentage, could get to the stripe, athleticism.
Got to the line, yeah.
On a true lead ball handler projecting. Now, if you have Tyler Kolek also on the board there, that's where it's like, oof, what do you want? Because to me, there's value if you're sure Kolek can play good enough defense. He gives you something to change up the tempo, control the game, brings that stuff. Like, if you go look at and read about him, he's a super competitive dude.
Would be better in a supplementary role.
Yeah.
Like Collier and Carrington learning how to play off ball year one would be the biggest adjustment for them. Kolek can do it right now.
And I guess I should look up, like, does Isaiah Collier catch and shoot well immediately, because he probably wasn't asked to do that a ton at USC, then I would feel a lot better about it. But Kolek, it's like, you know what you're getting. You know he's going to play this year. You know he can control pace and tempo. You know he's going to play really hard on defense. He's going to run an offense. He made at a really high level. Didn't have the turnovers of those other two guys. Like, yeah, maybe you miss and you're getting like an all-star down the road, but I think those two guys falling that far means that lots of teams are agreeing with you. Like, in this class, again, it's not that strong on top. They should be top 5 if they're going to be that good. And even if it's a Cade Cunningham or that type of player in that draft where it's like, you know what, he'll be pretty good down the road, I'm sure of it, they would be up there. So I just think there's a lot of red flags around those two guys, and you can't take that risk. Now, that being said, that would definitely excite you, and you put them in a good situation with a good developmental staff, and like an Isaiah Collier, maybe it's like we're taking advantage of him falling out of the lottery. I don't know, but that's a fun conversation and maybe realistic. I don't know if all 3 of those guys would be on the board, but maybe 1 or 2.
The digs on Collier is control, just him playing within. And again, that's where I'm going to bring up USC situation. It was a really bad team considering how talented it was as well. But 70% of his threes were assisted this year, and he only knocked down 34%. His free throw percentage was under 70, and that's where you worry about the jumper. With him, Carrington kind of went the other way, where only 43% of his threes were assisted, so he was taking a lot of pull-ups for him and just a lot of ISO stuff specifically. Carrington only shot 14% of his shots at the rim, and he only shot 54% there, so wasn't really getting inside too much. That's where Collier took 51% of his shots at the rim and shot 62% there with a little bit more of a bulky frame. I wish that Collier, watching just a little bit of him, was more explosive and just had more of that athleticism bump, to where with the strength that he has, he could be getting to the rim more consistently with his first step and things like that. But Collier, Damon, was a guy where coming into the season, I don't know if he was thought of like this for you, but he was thought of as a potential top 3, top 5 pick, right?
Yeah, so he came out of a high school in Georgia where he just dominated and got to the rim all the time like he did at USC, but was a much better finisher at the high school level, obviously. When he came into USC, there was an interesting little revolving doors moment that could have happened where, you know, he was, and this is similar to what happened at U of A recently, Collier was expecting that Boogie Ellis was going to go into the draft when he signed. And so when Boogie Ellis came back to USC, and Bronny was there too, and Bronny had the cardiac arrest thing going on, there was just so much going on with that USC team that the puzzle pieces just didn't fit quite right together. I think with Collier, you're still getting someone who can get in the paint at will, which as a point guard, that's not something that everybody can do. Whether he can turn those paint touches into productivity in terms of how the play ends, you know, we'll see how he develops. But for Collier overall, it feels like just his shooting is going to be such a big swing point for him, where if he can develop his three-point shot, which he, you know, like you said, hasn't shown a ton of it, then suddenly he's a much better prospect than if he doesn't.
Quick Kolek point, since we're talking about getting to the rim. I think he was at 48% of his shots were actually at the rim, which people don't think about him being that type to get to the paint and get all the way to the cup. I don't think he finished, I think it was like 57%, but
it was Nashian rim pressure, where you don't think of him as a rim pressure guy, but he's pressuring the rim. But 48% of his shots at the rim, 59% he shot there, so that's numbers higher than anything. Only 22% of his shots at the rim were assisted, so that's a lot of self-creation.
I wanted to point that out because that's important, and obviously he's in a pretty talented team, but that, I think people are underrating him when we're talking about why I don't even know if he'll be around when the Suns draft. But that, compared to the other two guys, when you're talking about upside, is something to really consider, because you just think about those guys joining the Suns, obviously blow-bys. We're talking about blow-bys so much this NBA Finals, but also self-creation and then just kick-outs is going to be a big part. The Suns were not as good at that as they should have been this past year. Anyone who can drive and kick to those very good basketball players will be very wanted by the Phoenix Suns.
Damon, a longtime NBA draft shtick is wings who will have 2 to 3 years, maybe even more, of college experience, and NBA front offices in the top 10 or top 15 don't want to take them because they know that they'll never be the second or third best player on their team, but teams in the late lottery, maybe even to that extent, but looking more at the end of the first round, know that this guy has a high floor. He is NBA ready. He is a winning player who makes winning plays. We stick to this stuff all the time. And at wing, it becomes even more important because that is typically a need for pretty much every team. There are teams that have 3 or 4 wings where Najee Marshall was kind of important for New Orleans, even though in theory he was their 5th best wing, and we saw him still be an impactful player for them as an example. Is Tristan da Silva as much of that guy as you think? Because looking at the entire first round, I think he's the only guy in that mold outside of Connect in general.
Yeah, I think Tristan da Silva is incredible as far as prospects in his range. I think he's cream of the crop for that post top 15, top 20, where the Suns maybe would have to trade up to get him, and they obviously don't have a ton of tools to do that with. But he just does so much good for your team as far as the connective things that he does as a passer on the perimeter. Playing 6'9" and being as good of a mover as he is at 6'9", I think that it's huge for what he brings to the table. Defensively, he can switch and guard just about any position. I think the only things that you don't feel good about Tristan guarding are 1s and 5s for the most part. But yeah, any other spot on the perimeter is fair game for him. I think Kashad Johnson is another one who more of a riser into that grouping than someone who's maybe at the top of the group like Da Silva, but I think that there's a bevy of those wings available.
Yeah, Kashad from an NBA draft perspective, or big board perspective, I should say, is currently positioned in a spot where he would be happy to get drafted. So to him at 22 is a little bit of a reach, it would be for the Suns to group him with Da Silva. We'll get to guys like Johnson here in a minute, but I think Da Silva you're spot on with, especially with the way the draft order is positioned. There are teams in the late teens, mid-teens, like Miami's going 15. Da Silva is such a Miami Heat player, it's insane. There's Memphis is in that range, I believe, as well as another team that I'm thinking of, where there are teams in the late teens that are going to be appealing what Da Silva does, so I think it's a wish to have him at 22. I'm still going to have a piece up today on him just because he's like the prototypical guy that they would be looking for. I just don't know if he's going to be there. I will let you pick 1 or 2. I say this like you need permission. I will let you pick 1 or 2 of the 14 wings from 15 to 30, or even like 40 or 50 if you really love a guy more than the average ranking, that are... They have a year or two, or they're international guys where they're wings and they're toolsy and they have stuff. Who sticks out to you amongst all those guys? We're talking about like the Bobby Clintmans, Tyler Smith, even earlier. That's where you go back to Furphy. That's where you go to Shireman is, I guess, is less of that actually. He's the experienced guy. George out of Miami is the other one I'm looking for. Is there anyone you love more than the consensus? Are you a Ryan Dunn boy, the best defender in the draft supposedly? Where are you going?
On Ryan Dunn, I like him as a defender. I mean, he's got that defense, but you know, when you can't provide any offense and you're 6'8", you're gonna tumble down draft boards. The guy that I like that you mentioned was Bobby Clintman, who is playing over in the Australian National Basketball League. He is one of the guys that I get so high on, people who are big, that can move well, and that seem to, at least I haven't talked to the guy, but he seems to see the game really well, especially on the defensive end. And when you're picking late first rounders, I almost want to find a guy who can play defense. Like, I know he can play defense, and then what more does he do than that, just because of how defense can get you on the floor a lot of the time in the NBA and guarantee you minutes. I think Bobby Clintman can be an NBA defender from day one, and I think that he's got enough offensively in terms of how he moves where he can drive a little bit, cut a little bit, slash a little bit. He's not an incredible shooter, but there's a good enough foundation where he can develop into one. So I think Clintman is a guy. Pakum Dadier is another guy from Ratio Farm Ulm in Germany. He's another really toolsy mover, just super high on those forwards who can move really well. Dadier plays a winning brand of basketball too. some of those buzzwords that you like to throw out.
There you go. The Jalen Johnson archetype is what I'll call it, Kevin, where he didn't play much in Atlanta year 1. Year 2 is when people were like, ooh, look at Jalen Johnson. And then in year 3 was supposed to really be the breakout. He dealt with some injuries, but he averaged 16 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, a block. It seems like he's going to be pretty awesome. He was a guy that fell a little bit in the draft. He went down to 20, was a guy who went to Duke, had a weird situation there.
Withdrew from Duke during like COVID and all that. So
yeah, Atlanta directly benefited from him just slipping because of the toolsy aspects of his game and the lack of like confirmed you can do stuff in the NBA things you were watching.
Yeah.
Do you think Jalen Johnson being the best case scenario where by year 2 you feel confident to put him out on the floor consistently? I'll ask you the point guard question again, but with a wing.
Yeah.
Are you okay with doing some of that? Like if they're watching Klintman tape and they're like, this kid by like the end of the season, he would be playable in the NBA for sure. And then by year 4, we could have one of the better 3-and-D wings in the league. Is that appealing to a team that is now?
I will use Keyshawn George, if that's how you say it, example where he's a guy who kind of a late bloomer, really grew. Miami guy. Important. James Jones went there, by the way.
Miami guy. No Michigan State.
He probably
guys.
watches guys there. From Switzerland, but anyway, he's had like 20 minutes a game, started half the games for the Hurricanes. But you watch him on tape, he only averaged like 7 points, but he had 2 assists, like 3 rebounds, shot 40% from 3, and didn't really do much more than shoot threes, really. But you look at his body and you look at him play defense, and you're like, oh my God, he just bothers people with the ball. He may not be the most nimble looking guy, but he moves really well, fluidly, and he knows how to like use his length to like sit back and just bother people with just his hands. Kind of like Mikal Bridges, where it's like he's not like in your grill, in your chest, but he's using his length, right? He's like one of those guys you put on some pounds, he'll be really good down the road. But this year I could say maybe he is going to be a good defender off the bat. And then you say, okay, can you shoot off the bat? Possibly. That's good enough to help this team. So I think that's the type of guy where if that value falls in your lap, you got to look at it if that's how your board's placed. But again, that's tough. Like I think one guy I kind of want to bring up with you guys is Kevin McCullough, and he, for Kansas, has lots of games under his belt, lots of high leverage games, obviously. Very productive on offense, makes the right play, can shoot, defends, plays bigger than he probably is. And that's the one where it's like, if you're comparing that to Keyshawn George, then I want Kevin McCullough Jr. And I'm not exactly sure, honestly, why his stock is kind of not really risen or fallen out of the first round, but it's not exactly risen. So I could be wrong there, but that's
you
where
got an answer on that, Damon, why he isn't in the De Silva range? Because I thought I was grouping him and De Silva together a couple months ago and I started looking at this stuff, and De Silva was the guy to go up, and he's in the mid to late teens. McCullough has stayed in the 30s and the 40s, it seems like, despite we're in combine workout phases where De Silva's gone up. McCullough's kind of stayed there. He's injured currently, right?
Yeah, that's so there have been some injury concerns with him. I think that's the biggest thing that NBA teams would have against him, because I just can't think of any other real red flags with him. He's not an incredible three-point shooter, but he's good enough to get by, I think, especially when you consider how good he is as a playmaker at his size. He's an incredible defender, too. I feel like I had seen him in the 15 to 20 range, but that could be wrong. He's one of the guys that if he were there at 22, I would almost not hesitate to take him.
Terrence Shannon Jr. is one more name I'll mention here just because of what the Suns specifically do not have on their team and what he provides just as an athlete. But I will start with the current thing he's going through. He's not having workouts right now because he's in court at the moment. An alleged sexual assault is where he's going for. He was charged with rape and then missed 6 games. And then Illinois was able to get a temporary lift on that. He was able to play the rest of the season, and now he is going through his trial right now. I believe day 2 of it was today. Understand a lot of people listening who will be immediately turned off by him as a prospect because of hearing that, but he is a guy that is on the first-round bubble, hyper-athletic in transition, and is going to appeal to NBA teams, but there are going to be a lot of NBA teams waiting to see what his next week kind of really turns out to be. And he is someone who, in my opinion, just would be a surefire first-round pick right now if he wasn't dealing with that type of stuff. So not someone we would mention, obviously, if he didn't have a chance of being selected by the Suns, but we want to keep you guys in the loop on him. Just fast as hell in transition and shot a lot better at three than you thought he would, and a lot of it was off the dribble for Illinois, and is someone who could come in right away and score for you and provide energy plays, and was an energy guy at Texas Tech, goes to Illinois, becomes one of the best players in the country. He was probably the best player in the whole tournament with how he played for Illinois. I want to go to bigs now, Damon, and that's where we'll talk about Zach Edey, just because he's one of the headline prospects in this class. You can give me your Edey opinions here, the NBA, like, will he translate kind of thing here? And then on the back half, I want you to tell me if there's anyone specifically you're looking at that could go in the lottery that you would love to see fall to the Suns if things go in their favor. Is Edey one of those guys for you?
I don't love Edey as a prospect, honestly. That could just be my own hard-headedness, because I don't love post players in general. I also have felt like and this is kind of an old opinion because he's grown out of that, and we'll touch on this, but he really used to have cinder blocks for feet. He's gotten a lot better about that now, which is part of why I'm starting to grow on him a little bit, just because you start diving into the intel behind who Edey is as a person, and he just has glowing reviews from everyone that says anything about who he is. He improves every year, gets quicker every year, got better as a defender every year that he was at Purdue. And Purdue asked him to be just a post player because that was what was best for their offense. But we don't know what he looks like when he gets into an NBA system where he's asked to do NBA things. I think he's going to guard pick and rolls better than people expect him to, just because of, he's a real ball head sicko where he's understanding things much better than he used to, and I think that his trajectory could continue in a good way. Not to say that I want him on the Suns still, just because of what his most likely projection would look like and my preferences for what centers look like, but he's somewhere where I think that, like, you're going to get good production out of him, whether he's a backup or whether he's, like a fourth or fifth starter.
So to the question I asked you, Devin Carter was the guy. That's not happening anymore because NBA teams got a really good look at him, and now he might even go in the top 10. Jacoby Walter out of Baylor, Jared McCain out of Duke. I don't think Jalen Williams' brother Cody out of Colorado is going to fall that far. Maybe the Topic kid falls because of his recent injury. Is there anyone of those guys where if they're on the board at 19 or 20 you're starting to get really excited?
Topic, yeah. But, I mean, his injury situation... He's from Red Star, was at KK Mega before that, which is like Serbia's G League Ignite, essentially. And when he was with Mega, he looked incredible as a point guard, where he's a pick and roll maestro, and he's feeding nice pocket passes to bigs inside and hitting threes off the dribble and off the catch. Then he gets to Red Star, where he's imported into the EuroLeague for the second half, or what was supposed to be the second half of the season. He ends up getting injured. And that's the start of where the injury snowball kind of starts. And then recently at the International Combine, where all the international guys went through the measurements and stuff, it was revealed that he had a partially torn ACL. And so it might be a situation where he's going back to Red Star and seeing if he can improve his stock to maybe be top 5 in the Cooper Flag class. But if he stays in, I mean, if you have a chance to get someone like that at 22, that's an incredible opportunity. He's someone that I was very high on before the injury issues.
To move on with centers, Deron Holmes, you mentioned already. I wrote a piece about him on the site. There's going to be a few other prospects where I just write about them solely. He was the first one that I did, and the working thing here, Kevin, is that the Suns need a lob threat or they need a three-point shooter, and he can be both. One of my favorite numbers on him is that he shot 74% at the rim, and that was with only 57% of those baskets being assisted, which is really low for a big. That's very low for him to be able to get himself there, or whether it's the post play that's getting him there or the straight line drives off a dribble or two. The shooting is the thing for him where it's just your automatic thing. Whenever a number goes up in 1 year, his shooting got to a legitimate point, and it's like, okay, are you going to be able to do this now? We're going to move the line back even further for you. Can that progression retain, and can it hold on there? Defensively, Is he a rim protector, like a primary rim protector? I don't know, just because of how thin he is, and he's not. If his arms were 3 inches longer, like that's the type of thing you would always talk about with these guys. But he can block shots. He's a good rim protector. Defensively, he can move a little bit, but it's mainly that you're getting a guy who knows how to score. I looked this up. He's one of the best college basketball's best scorers, big men wise, getting to the line, that kind of thing, that we've seen a long time. The numbers are alongside Blake Griffin, Tyler Hansborough, Ike Diagu. I know people are going to hear those numbers and be worried about the NBA prospects of some of those guys, were namely the last two guys. But think of him more in terms of how productive he was, hyper productive he was in college. And to me, at center, this is what you're looking for. Can you find a guy to come off the bench that can change a little bit of what you do offensively? I could make this pitch with Zach Edey, but the Suns are not a team positioned to get the most out of a post player. There are certain teams that lack so many offensive threats that they can look at Edey as a guy off the bench in year one, starting year two, where him in the post is a legitimate part of your offense. The Suns would never get there, so I don't think he's much of an option for them. But Holmes, as a supplementary piece, I think would. Are you with me?
Can you look up, I think there's a lot of value in him and Filipowski bringing him into this too, where they bring offensive diversity. There's not just, they're not just a stretch. Can you look up their finishing and in paint at the rim numbers for me for a sec? Because I think
the Holmes one was the 74% I mentioned, which is awesome.
Because I think Edey's value on the Suns, and honestly any team, but the only value he would have on the Suns is your rim gravity, because he's an awesome finisher. Throw that man the ball, he can spray it out too. But the other two guys, they can move the ball on top. They can fire a three up if the shot clock's winding down and have a decent chance of going in. They just have a little diversity to them where you really like that as your backup center, and both of them are good enough athletes, if not a little undersized, both of them, where that's a good value pick. I have confidence both of those guys could be NBA rotation players pretty soon, just because of, again, college production and playing in high leverage situations. So I think that those two guys, you have to, when we're having the battle of ceilings and NBA things versus just I know this guy's going to be a good rotation player, like Yves Messi from Baylor is a guy who also undersized but just amazing athlete, just straight up rim runner, can be really switchable on defense.
Can he be the Derek Lively? Because Derek Lively was a pretty toolsy guy last year, and then it turns out he's good at basketball right away. Yeah. Can he be your version of that, essentially? Filipowski, 54% of his shots at the rim, shot 62% there, 48% assisted. So those are very encouraging numbers for him, despite what some of the weaknesses for him might be. Those numbers look pretty good. I think Kellan Olson is going to be too tantalizing for teams for him to even fall to 22. I think in some mocks I saw him recently at
go look
10.
Up the lowlights though.
That's
the effort level, and that's one where
highlights.
The highlights. His highlights are really good.
Deron Holmes on steroids, basically. It's like you're looking at the pick and pop stuff, and you're looking at the explosion for him.
And then you
too.
look at him walking around on defense. You're like, oh, could we get rid of that? But also, was this a Ben Simmons situation where you will just suddenly not do that?
Is ball just kind of life for you, or is it life for you? That's the thing. Are you in on Kellan Olson? Again, I think he's going to be gone. I think he's going to go to the lottery, but
I'm not a Ware guy.
Tape no good. Tape scary.
Tape's scary for sure. There's been some good reviews, funny enough, from the early interview process as far as how he's doing in terms of explaining the effort things. I don't know how you explain it other than the Ben Simmons thing.
Yeah.
He's, I think, the lowest of the 4 or 5 centers that we've talked about for me.
Interesting. I'm now even more intrigued to write about him because, again, I think
his highlights are very fun though.
You and I have been doing this a long time and know how front offices think, and I just think that in our locker room, in our program, we're gonna get that stuff out of the way, and then all of a sudden we're gonna be talking about one of the 10 best centers in the league next year.
He is rising. He was end of first round a month ago ish, and he's, I think,
worked his way out of that. All right, rapid fire before we go. All of us can just go one by one and go as many times as we want to. Damon, I'll let you even pitch guys that aren't even ranked in the top 100 if you want to. I did that stuff. Do you remember those guys like Jonathan Williams and Vince Williams and Jamari Bouye? who I
We're
was
trying to fill a G League roster here.
Yeah, we'll give you the Valley Suns GM hat here, and this can be anyone. So if you have a really hot take on Stephon Castle or Reed Shepherd, if you want to lay it out there, go ahead. But the Suns are in a position where trading down makes a lot of sense. I wrote about this on ArizonaSports.com. The 22 for 22 thing that Kevin and I talked about last episode is a weekend. We're going to keep it rolling through the draft. I'm going to have all the posts every day. And something I wrote about is why trading down makes so much sense for them. We talked about last episode how there are a couple of different teams with draft picks like Utah 29-32. I think Minnesota is 27-37, where if you can just move down 5 or 6 spots and you can get a second rounder in the high 30s, low 30s, low 40s, you can find some value there and really pick up a guy that you like. So I'll go first. I love a Dembona out of UCLA because I love energy bigs, and I always will for the rest of my life. Like Deron Holmes, one of my favorite Suns that I've watched in the last 5 years, just because he appeals exactly to what I need. No one plays harder. Physically, he's shorter than he needs to be. If he was 2 inches taller, his arms were 3 inches longer, he would be a lottery pick in my opinion, because the defensive versatility for him, to Damon's thing of can you move, he can really move. You watch him in Pac-12 when you're watching the random Dave Pash, Bill Walton game we were talking about when UCLA's playing. Dembona is doing 3 things where Bill Walton freaks out during the game, and he's just talking about how that's the 5th greatest achievement in UCLA scholarly history or whatever he would say. Defensively, the shot blocking and the overall rim protection as an anchor is where I have a little bit of, not just restraint is what I'll phrase it. Like, I don't want to go out there saying he's one of the best defensive prospects in this league, but he's hyper explosive, and Durag Hoops has been a great follow on Twitter for several years, and he's been pleading to the heavens above for athletes on the Suns, and this guy would be an athlete for you. Damon, who's your guy you want to look at? Who you bringing up first?
I'll go with AJ Mitchell from UC Santa Barbara.
The Jalen Brunson clone?
Yeah. So what he's referring to is a lot of people have been comparing AJ Mitchell to Jalen Brunson throughout the season, and so P3 Sports Science, whatever it's called, ended up doing like a whole video about, we tested Jalen Brunson's athletic tools when he was going through the draft process, and we did the same thing with Mitchell. They looked almost the same.
Mitchell out of UC Santa Barbara, so he's kind of gaining momentum right now because teams are starting to see him more. The Jalen Williams Santa Clara thing, whatever you want to call that. Not to the point where he'll go in the lottery, but what do you like about his game?
He was a big standout throughout the combine process, but really, I just like that he has a lot of shake and wiggle to his handle and how he creates shots. He's a point guard in the same way that Shea is kind of a point guard, where he's mostly scoring, but he's still kind of your lead guard. At least that's what he was for UCSB. Last season, he was in the top 10 percentile of efficiency for pick and roll handling, isolation, and spotting up. And the pick and roll ball handling was with the added bonus of him doing it on like the 97th percentile volume. Mm-hmm. And so he's just got like such a pedigree of being this scorer. And he tore apart to localize it. He tore apart NAU when they played and scored 25 points when he played at Footprint Center. So he's got a little bit of that Suns Arena familiarity. Could follow him there. But yeah, I like his game.
My fun comp for him is Gilbert Arenas, not because of he plays like Gilbert Arenas, but is in a combo-y kind of difficult spot with assessing him. But maybe once he gets the full reins to a team, that's when we start to see what he really is. And he starts as a combo in the league, but then he, like Jalen Brunson, he's doing point guard stuff in year 2 or year 3 where you're like, oh my gosh, is this guy one of the better players in the whole gosh darn league? Kevin, who's your guy?
Can't believe we've gone this far. I'm going to fire off. Tristan Newton was really good in big games for UConn. If he could shoot, he would be a lot higher. But the guy we should also mention as far as winning, see my theme here.
What I was going to say next.
Production.
Go ahead.
Production. Who produced in college basketball? Jamal Shed. Is that what you're going to say?
Yeah.
Like, especially fit for Suns wise, a guy like not a huge scorer, but just floor general, leader, makes a defensive presence, can shoot, right? He can shoot well enough.
Can't remember what draft it is when I decided that I love point guards who can defend, and like a point of attack, a primary point of attack defender is a lot more valuable than people think it is. And I don't care who's doing it. I don't care if it's a 5'11" TJ McConnell. I don't care if it's a 6'8" Jason Tatum or whatever. And he was to me, when I watched his stuff more after I went into the undrafted thing, he was one of the best point of attack guys that I've seen in the last couple of years.
How much in the NBA playoffs this season, I want someone to write on this or look it up or something, but I felt like there was more backcourt pressure than
JJ Redick
times.
cited this and said the amount of full court, it's the highest it's been on Synergy.
Yeah, and it wasn't just watching the Suns. It was like, wait, the Pacers are doing this. Like, everyone's doing it now. Shed would be awesome in that. And
can he not be a different version of Jose Alvarado? That's
he can be. He's thick. You're not moving him off the spot. And also, though, like he's not Javon Carter where he can't dribble the ball up the court. On offense, he can at least do that, get guys in spots, run an offense. He's not necessarily going to be getting 10 assists a game, I don't think, but he can run an offense and be a point guard. So if you're going to reach like that kind of dude with that pedigree, with that kind of build and mindset.
There was a viral clip of him 3 years ago, where Houston coaches were being adults and kicking trash cans because they were mad about the end of the call. And then Jamal Shed was the 18-year-old kid who went and picked up the trash afterwards. Yeah. And he went viral for that. Everyone raves about him. And I think to your point on if anyone in this draft could work on this team, it would be him, just because he would get that. They would scrimmage with him for one game and then be like, oh, we love this kid. Like, well, if you want to take the ball up, Jamal, for these next 3 possessions, go ahead. We trust you. Like, we'll get you there. He
would fit in the room immediately.
They would love him. And I think defensively, I was mentioning point of attack stuff, but it was more encompassing like the full everywhereness of his defense. The clip that I included in my story was him as a weak side rim protector and then swiping the ball away. And he's amazing. I love him. Jalen Bridges is a guy that you mentioned out of Baylor, Damon, where in my 12-minute research, I was like, why aren't you in the 30s? You're in
I don't get that
50s, apparently. He didn't shoot it that great until this past year with Baylor, but with how he was shooting it at Baylor, a ton of off-the-move stuff. They were using him off the move a lot. He was in a great situation on a fantastic team, so maybe that's part of it as well. But I think that he is a guy absolutely where once you get into the 30s, if you can trade down and pick up another pick, he's a name that I'll mention as well. Who's next for you, Damon?
I'll mention Cam Spencer out of UConn.
Shooter.
Another big-time playmaker in high-leverage situations. You talk about efficiency. This guy is efficient. Everything he does, he shoots it so well. The people are just going to knock on him because he's not very fast or athletic in any way, really. But he's smart enough to make up for it a little bit. And I like to think that defense really starts with effort and smarts. So since Cam Spencer has those two things going for him, I think he can be passable at the very least. Really just an incredible connective piece for any team, I think. So there's really almost no spot in the second round, maybe after like 35 or so, where that'd be too rich for Cam.
There's one guy in the top 50, 75 who I haven't watched any of, but I just saw his name and I saw what he does and I'm really interested. The San Francisco kid, Mogbo, is that how you say it?
Mobo.
Mobo? Mm-hmm. Mobo. What's the deal with him? Because he seems like, is it Precious Achua-y? Is that what's going on there?
A little bit. He's like if a center was 6'5". And so he's not a small ball 5 because he can't shoot. And, well, I mean, not that he can't shoot, but that he doesn't at all. And so he's not going to bring you down with that, but the gravity, of course, is going to come down. But he's an incredible passer for the role that he played for San Francisco. A really good defender, too. I think probably a better defender than anything else he does. So that's the kind of guy he is.
Yep, 14 and 10. He averaged 3.5 offensive rebounds a game. He shot 64%, which seems like it should be a little bit higher based on what he was doing, and then the 3 free throws a game just based on the type of player that he was, but I'm guessing he wasn't on the ball a ton. 3.5 assists per game is a ton. If you're not on the ball primarily in college and you're averaging 3.5 assists, Dalen Terry was a guy who we loved as a passer, and he had 4 assists per game as a guy who was kind of sort of on the ball, stealing a half a game, nearly a block a game, and he's coming off a year at Morehead State the year before where he had a block a game. So I thought he was fun and interesting. Anyone else for you, Kev? You a Juan Nunez boy? Are you looking overseas?
I was going to go into Cats talk right now, but...
You're going to do your Pelle Larsson thing again?
I'm going to do my Pelle Larsson thing again.
All right, man, sure.
Pelle Larsson.
I'll say it, did not pass the Aaron Holiday test for me.
Ooh.
Don't see it. He passed the Milos Teodosic test of like he will be a really good European pro, but go ahead.
Tell him to take shots if he's on the Phoenix Suns.
That's a problem, Kevin.
He's a good shooter. He's underrated defender. He makes the right play, low turnovers.
Very good 0.5 guy.
0.5 guy.
Would be a great 0.5 guy.
I don't need to go in more depth.
I understand if a team even takes him in the first round, but
he's going to get the Solomon Hill. I have Solomon Hill vibes around him where he's going to go 20th and you're going to be like, what in the world? And then it might not go well, but that's fine.
I'll say right now, if Kashad Johnson gets picked by the right team on draft night, and I'll declare it as such when he gets picked, if he did or did not, that he will be one of the 15 best players in this class. I'll say it out loud right now.
I watched an interview with him this morning, but it was from the Combine. He said he made a comp to himself to PJ Washington, and obviously this is how many months ago? I don't even know. A little bit ago, before the Dallas Mavericks found themselves in the NBA Finals behind PJ Washington's amazing run that has kind of cooled, but yeah.
I think one of my favorite outcomes for them is if they do the 27-37 drop or something like that, and they get like Kolek at 27, and then they take a guy like Kashad at 37, something like that. Kashad is 5-position defender is a very loose label that people use. Like, if you were Smart and De Silva being like, hold on, he can't guard 1s or 5s. Like, I'm telling the defense, but it's 3 positions, not 5. Let's relax. Kashad's close. Like, he's
4.
He's close, and I thought that his set shot specifically looked great for the expectations that I had coming in of who he was supposed to be as a shooter and what I saw. I think he could be an NBA shooter, absolutely. And is just everywhere and talks crap all the time and plays super tough. He has the Bona thing where he just is competing everywhere. Mm-hmm. And maybe it's me being biased as an Arizona fan in a really detailed way where we were really missing swagger and toughness on the team for a year, and then he came in and just did all of that with Caleb Love, and it was almost overload with those two, but in a really good way. I think he just looks like he is on the Aaron Holiday test, if it was a 10 out of 10 scale, he'd be like a 9.7. He looks so much like an NBA player. I'd be really surprised if he didn't become an NBA player, but if he gets drafted by Charlotte and he has to compete with 9 young guys. But if he gets picked, like Portland is another one where it wouldn't really work, but if he signs a 2-way with Miami and goes undrafted because he wants to go to Miami, he'd be starting for them with Jaquez next year probably. Like, he would just be great. Any other names, Damon, for you?
I'll give one just for the Valley Suns consideration. There was a guy who I really had fun watching during the combine scrimmages. This is Enrique Freeman from Akron.
Ooh.
He is like a 6'9", 6'10" forward, and I saw a possession where he just grabbed and brought the ball up and took a 3, like as soon as he came up the court, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I'd like to get that guy in the Valley Suns system and see what kind of things we can work with there.
He has some pop to him.
Yeah.
Some attitude.
Bronny James as an NBA prospect. Go.
Oh, okay. So I actually have a really good stat for this. His 3-point shooting at USC was bad. We all know that. Mm. To put a number to it, it was 26.2% across 61 attempts. But, between all the bad roster things we had talked about and the cardiac arrest thing, I went back and looked at his 3-point numbers pre-USC. And for everything across his senior year that I could find on Synergy, he was at 32.9% on 158 attempts.
Okay.
So that's much better. And even when you include before that, like when he's playing up ages in 17U and at 15U when he's like just a child still, even those numbers are like 30% on 250 attempts. So I think the shooting is something that needs just to get another try. I think really you could look at the whole USC season as a wash just because of the context things that we talked about. He's, of course, too small to be a 2 and not a good enough shooter to be a 2 and can't dribble well enough to be a 1, can't pass well enough to be a 1. But I think that if he gets the chance to grow a little bit in Tempe and develop next to some really good players like Booker and Durant, that he could become something eventually, but it's just not there right now, and it would obviously be value malpractice to take him in the first round.
Jalen Johnson was the guy we brought up earlier where his Duke year, whatever you want to call it, couldn't have gone worse, I guess, from getting his eyeballs, and he turns out he's a really good NBA player. Peyton Watson is still kind of getting there for being a rotation player, but that UCLA year was a disaster for him, and he's a good NBA player. Guys all the time in this scenario where they're a 5-star recruit, top 50 recruit, whatever, go to college for a year, it doesn't work out, they go to the draft, and then they turn into a good NBA player anyway because their situation just sucked. And I think that's going to be the case for him. Like, I think that he is going to turn himself into an NBA player, but what is he? Is he Jose Alvarado or is he Derek White? There's a really big difference between those two guys. I think he's more of Jose Alvarado. He should be trying to be that. Everyone should try to be Derek White and Drew Holiday, don't get me wrong, but he's probably just going to be on the Alvarado thing where he's a fringe NBA player and then maybe he develops into a bit more in the right situation. So you're saying if he's there like late 30s, you're okay with it. There's probably guys you would like more, but you'd be okay with it.
I can see the rationale at the very least, yeah.
Okay. Anything else, bud?
I got nothing.
Okay. We did really well. I'm proud of us. Damon, thank you so much for your help.
Man.
We really do
Thank
appreciate it. I think we went over, like 25, 30 names there. I think everyone's going to have their own people that they attach to after hearing us discuss it there. We'll be back next week to look more at the draft even further. I'm going to have a lot of stories. We didn't really even get into them at all. It's a lot of stuff that we can potentially bounce off of. K-Tag, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's sweeping the nation. You don't like my analytic?
Oh, that,
yeah.
Does Kellan think he's good?
Kellan thinks they are good. K-Tag. What do you think? Don't you love how I just said K-Tag and you were just rolling along with it? You had no idea. Because anyone can just say VORP and you're like, sure.
VORP.
Value over replacement.
I thought it was the double T's got me. It's confusing in my brain.
Okay. Let's just see how it turns out, I guess. I don't know if the hype will reach there. We'll be back next week, everyone. Bye.